morning.
Good morning. Let's check it.
Hey, I'm Kevin. Good morning.
I'm Tim.
I'm Suzie.
And we have been in a series called Being over the last couple months. And the goal behind that series was to kind of walk us through the beginning of the year a little bit. And in that, we were shooting to help move us rather from just people who do stuff to people who can be and rest in that being. And one of the verses that we kind of based the series on was found in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. And it says this: above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. And really, that is the essence of life. Our hearts are the keeper of life, and what we do and what we think is an overflow of what has actually happened in our hearts. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is a reflection on the heart. And for somebody like myself, I live in the world primarily through my mind, through my head. And with that comes this ongoing, I think, in terms of how do I renew my mind, not necessarily how do I infuse or refresh my heart or soul or change my soul. And so with that comes me having to adjust to that idea that, oh, there's more to this than just thinking and being in my head. You've got a different approach than I do because better,
right?
Yes,
right.
No doubt. 10,000 minutes speaks to an idea of what am I going to do with what I know to be true.
Ooh, he mixed it up.
And so,
Yeah, no, I think for me, in my life, I've started out with an unhealthy doing. So it was like, here's what you're supposed to go do because you're a religious person. And this is the right thing because God's going to really love you if you do this. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where that would start out with me. And I think, in my talk, and one of the things I was reminded of was out of a healthy place of being, just being with Jesus, mm-hmm. walking with him, joining him, that he's at work, he's in control, and he's doing cool stuff, so let's just join him in it. Out of that place, and we're loved no matter what, then we can actually practice these things.
Right.
So
yeah, very good. And we are in the hopeful that you will get your phones out and you will text us some questions.
Or just take pictures of us. Really?
Yeah, that too. And post them somewhere. No.
Yeah, so we've just finished a whole series, and if there are things that and even as we're talking, if something comes up,
that prompts you, send us a question.
Send us some questions.
We got some really good questions last time.
Yeah, no pressure. 8:30 was amazing. And if you're watching us online, feel free to send us your questions as well.
And we may have answers, and we may not, and go, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good
How's
answer.
that work for you?
Right. Yeah. And part of this is that the series we work through like humility, we work through work, generosity, celebration, rest. Do we count manure in that one?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
And
I talked on manure, and apparently that's going to be the new name for me. Is that because out of manure, great things grow, right? Can I get an amen?
No, you can't.
Oh my gosh, I'm getting so many dumb texts. This is not good. Images and
oh no,
things that are appropriate and inappropriate. This is great. Well done, guys.
Yes.
Good work.
Oh, there's another one.
Okay.
Oh.
Maybe it's not good to have me lead this part.
Yep.
This is a question that
we
came.
know who you are too, so.
That's not true. What?
Well, the person that's texting you that, so we can guess.
Yeah, that's a good guess. What part or parts of this series were the most convicting to you personally? We didn't answer this one last time. And have there been any practical changes in your life as a result?
Yeah.
I'll answer it first.
Go.
We are kind of ending our village experience right now, and in our group, we were talking. It was the week on rest, and we read through Psalm 23 and how, the shepherd makes them lie down in green pastures. Just, it's like, hey, this isn't just to do a religious thing. This is good for your soul. This is good for your heart. And at the end it says that I will basically rest in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. And that phrase, all the days of my life, became my practice that week, and it's actually been for the past few weeks ever since. I write this X on my wrist every day, just reminding me of that I woke up again, and then also, like, what does Jesus want me to practice today? Not out of a place of earning anything, but just because I'm loved. And it's been, for me, I get to live in the house of God, just in the kingdom of God, all the days of my life, and he's at work no matter what. That has been so restful to my soul in non-restful times. Yeah, you guys?
Yeah, wow.
For me,
I don't know if you
it
follow
was
that one.
generosity.
Go for
It
that.
was just this last week for sure. I've been thinking a lot about, like, the word generous is actually like my word for the year, which was nice of you to do a whole
Wow.
I it for me.
That's awesome. Generous.
But yeah, I mean, I grew up with a scarcity mindset. I grew up in a family where there was never, there actually was always enough, but it was communicated that there might not be, but there always was. So I grew up with that mindset of thinking that, and so I think it's affected my view of generosity and what generosity is and isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea of it being your time, treasure, and your gifts and what you give of yourself and your presence and being a part of something has been very formative for me as I've grown in understanding that. But I have a really hard time. I think I'm a heart person more than I am like opposite of you.
Right.
But I do have a lot of really good.
Most people are.
I have a lot of really.
She has a heart, is what
I
she's
have a
trying to
heart.
say.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of really pretty good theology in my head that has a hard time making its way down to my heart. And so my connection of the two, there's like the pathway between the two isn't great all the time. So I feel like I know a lot of stuff about generosity and what it is and what we're called to as people who are with Jesus, but actually practicing that daily is really challenging for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mine's where it's hit me the most over this last 2 months is I have an innate fear that's underneath some of why I do what I do, and that is, am I enough? Am I going to be enough? And over the last couple of months, with the events that have taken place at Journey, I've been asking that question a lot. And rather than being, I've been asking the wrong question, am I enough? So my prayers and my movement towards God has been, it's you're enough, and it doesn't matter if I am or not.
Dang.
So.
Way to drop into that heart.
Oh, sure. There you go.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, how does being work in relationship to being spirit-filled or spirit-led?
Oh, that's such a good question.
Say it
good.
again.
How does being work in relationship to being spirit-filled or spirit-led? I'll answer. Oh, no, you.
Who's going here?
So it's such a good question because you could go a lot of different directions with it.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we have this this view that being filled with the Spirit or being Spirit-led is this like woo-woo, like ethereal thing.
Oh, okay.
And like when you become awakened to Jesus, it's the Spirit of God that awakens you and fills you, and it's this tuning your heart to His presence. We believe that the Spirit of God is a person, is a part of the Trinity, and so the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are always at work together in us and around us, and so I think one of the reasons why we did this series and we structured it the way that we did in those specific areas is because we believe that there's this idea that God is always present. We don't have to ask him to show up. We don't have to invite him in. Like we use a lot of that language because we were brought up to talk that way, but he's actually always here. And so this idea of being filled with the Spirit and being led by the Spirit is actually in this paying attention to what is and where he already is and how he's already moving. I know that that's also different than some ways that some of us might have been brought up.
Sure.
That there's different theological streams that think,
Yeah.
differently about that. But I had a friend who used to say, when I would ask for the Spirit of God to fill me, and he would look at me and go, "Did you spring a leak?" And sometimes I think we just forget that he's there because we're so busy and so distracted and so filled with so much noise around us that we forget that he's there. And so our hearts are tuned to the distractions and not to him. And so for me, that prayer is tune me into you and not these other things. So
The Bible speaks of three kind of things around this idea. It speaks to baptism, it speaks to filling, and it speaks to this idea of being led. Baptism of the Spirit is that one-time event when you come to faith, but filling seems to be an ebb and flow, because Paul states that he said, "Be filled," and so we participate in that filling in some form or fashion. In that I don't think it's a wrong prayer to say, "Fill me."
Right.
It is to acknowledge that I've marginalized the Spirit in me, and so it is to re-engage the Spirit. It is to pay attention. It is that being led by the Spirit is to acknowledge that we need to lean into where God wants to take us, rather than taking God where we're going. So it's
so good.
It's a shift. It's a shift in thinking, but it's also a acknowledgement that we are such independent creatures that we find ourselves not taking the lead. We take the lead from the Spirit, and it gets weird then, because the walk of faith turns into a walk of arrogance rather than a walk of faith, because I'm going to lead God.
Right.
So anyway, that's how I differentiate those things.
Kevin.
Oh, no.
Yes.
I'm getting called out in a text.
Who's your favorite person on the stage? So that's... Okay, that wasn't really it.
Skip that one.
Okay. Kevin, could you speak more on conflict?
Sure.
That has been a theme at my job. How do you navigate collaborating when the other person in conflict only wants to win? How do we still collaborate?
There's so many smart aleck responses right now in my mind. That's a really good question, and difficult to okay. The other person wants to win, and you want to collaborate. And the only way that it works, collaboration only works if both sides want to collaborate, or if there is somebody involved in the conflict that has more authority than the two people that are competing, and forces the hand of them into collaborating. So there's ways to navigate it in the workplace where you can bring somebody to a collaborating place even though they don't want to be there. But I would also say it ends up bad.
What's the spiritual practice in this?
What's the spiritual practice?
What's the invitation in this moment?
It is to invite the person that's competing into a place where they trust the relationship enough where they can go to collaborate. They have to move off of the idea that they win and move towards the idea that the relationship is the win. And it's really hard to do when somebody sees their livelihood or their value in winning the conflict. And so somewhere in that person is, and then you also have to, as a person that sits in the collaborating seat, have to ask the question, how far do I want to go and how much is this worth it to me to win or to get this person to move towards me? And those are all things that you end up working out in. And I think Jesus sometimes works towards collaboration in his relationship with people, but he also lets people win. The thing that comes to mind is the rich young ruler comes to him and says, "Hey, Jesus, what must I do to inherit the kingdom of God?" And he says, "Sell everything you've got and come follow me." And the guy goes, "I don't think so. I'm gonna keep what I got, and I'm gonna do what I want." Jesus doesn't collaborate with him at that moment, and he doesn't move towards him in a way that compromises Jesus' side. He just says, "Okay." And there's a sense of where there's the allowance for loss, because there's a loss there. Is that what you were asking me?
I think you're doing great.
Okay.
Do you have something to say?
Did you want to add something to that?
Nope.
Okay.
For people who struggle with mental health issues like depression, how can we live out the fullness of God when life seems not hopeful?
That's heavy.
That's like depression. So read it again.
Okay. For people who struggle with mental health issues like depression, how can we live out of the fullness of God when life seems not hopeful? Well, we'll start out by saying whoever that is, and we all have some form of this, that I'm super sorry. Mm-hmm. You can just kind of sit there for a second. Yeah. Right? So.
I would say, too, when we're experiencing things like that, we feel like we're not full, we're not whole, and that that we're broken. And to some degree, we all are, right? That's why we need Jesus. But there is this, like what you were going back to what you were saying earlier, you are enough, and the fullness of God is available to all of us. And all of us practice daily understanding and walking in what that is.
Yeah. And part of this is if this is truly a clinical thing, there's help with that. But also, oftentimes depression is, and things like this, or we're caught in a cycle of a routine or a place and a thought process, and we have to break some of our thought process away from our but it's also, I would say, it's an image issue. It is to awaken to the image of Christ in you. It is to move away from I'm defined by this and move towards I'm defined by God. There is finding worth and value in the human, no matter the human condition.
And the hope is in that and not in our current experience.
Right. It is what God calls us that matters more than what even a clinical diagnosis calls us or what this world calls us. And God calls us his children. He calls us divine masterpiece. He calls us a lot of things that bring innate and amazing value to the human being. And there's no qualifier on it based upon whether they can walk, whether they can talk, whether they can do things. The value is inherent in the we are created in God's image. And we have to rest in that. We have to move towards that and away from what the world tells us is our value.
I started out by saying I'm sorry for whoever that is. And all of you have stuff in this room that we'd all listen to your story and go, I'm so sorry.
Yep.
And also, because you can't come up here and hit me, I'd also say this to you. I'm also not sorry. Because these are these great invitations that Jesus is saying, okay, I know life sucks. There's some really hard stuff going on. And I'm at work in all things. And I actually care more about your heart and working on things. And let's align in this. Mm-hmm. And there's like fruit that comes out of that. There's like a fullness of God that is like already available. And I think the only way we see that stuff is through these situations. So I'm so sorry for all the things that we're walking through in this room and have walked through. And I'm not sorry in some ways because it's the only way that we actually grow.
I know we're not supposed to talk about it yet because we're talking about it at the end.
No, go for it.
But our next series is going to be a lot of just this very thing, in that we're going to make space for these kinds of things that we either individually bear or we bear on behalf of somebody else. But these really hard things. I mean, part of the challenge in sitting up here is that, like, I mean, everything you said was really good and true, and you know, but you sit up here with this like fear and trepidation of like, that's a really hard thing to hold. And even though we have all these things that we can say that are true, they can also feel like platitudes, and they can also feel like, yeah, I know that, but again, moving it from your head to your heart. So the season that we're entering into next, which is called Lent, is a time of really making space for those things, and making space for lament, and holding our sorrows, and holding our struggles, and holding our questions and our doubts and our loneliness and our fears, because that's what Jesus did when he was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. But we'll talk more about that at the end.
Okay.
Kevin,
Oh,
a major struggle.
popular today. Okay.
Kevin, a major struggle I have with being generous with my time when it comes to ministry is that I can't shake my feeling that I have nothing to offer and won't live up to the expectations. I feel as though I've failed before I've even started. I don't know. What's up with that? I like that. How do you think I could combat this?
That's a great question. I think generosity it's good that you're connecting these two dots. And rather than dive into the deep end of, whoever wrote this, dive into the deep end of, I want to give as much time as I can, or be, you take small steps in this. And what I've learned over the years in terms of just, and I equate this more to money. It took me a while to figure out how to give money for me personally, and now for me it's time. But as time went on, I realized I gave a little bit. I start with just giving a little bit, and I realized that I didn't miss it. And then I realized that it was blessing people. And then I realized, so there was this compounding effort by God to reveal a little bit at a time to me how he would take generosity in my life and multiply it in the lives of other people. And the other side of this is with time. Right now, I have a tendency to hoard my time. That's, I'm not generous with it. And when I hoard it, I also find that I don't have any time, and which compounds it, which I go, okay, I should hoard more, and because I don't have any. But the solution actually is I should give my time away, because when I give my time away, I have more time. Doesn't make sense, but it does in the economy of God. It does make sense in the and not having something to offer is more of a self-perception. You have something to offer. And so deep in you is, that would say, what you're in essence saying to God is, you've given me to the church, but you didn't give me anything to give the church, which is a lie. It is just a flat out lie. He's given you something to give to the church. I don't know what that is. Love to talk to you about it. Any of us would. But there is a sense of where start small, start little, do something behind the scenes, do something, just give a little bit of your time. Do it in such a way that it's an offering to God, and what you will experience is that you have something to offer because you're giving it to God. And it shifts the heart. Just be persistent and continuous and present. Somebody, I was talking to somebody after the 8:30 service, and he said, sometimes it's just showing up. I mean, after what we've been through as a church, to see you all here and just showing up blesses us. Just being here blesses us. You've changed our lives by being here. And you, each other, change each other's lives by showing up. So don't discount the little things. Don't take away the little things. Just build on the little things. That's what I would say.
That's good. We'll do probably our last one. Practically, what does rest look like when you have people depending on you constantly?
Why are you looking at me?
Well, because you have
It
four
says
kids.
Suzie.
It's Suzie. Yeah,
It says Suzie. I
yeah.
don't know what.
You have four
Practically,
kids.
what does rest look like when you have people depending on you constantly?
I think, first of all, we often misunderstand rest as simply just taking a break, and that if we just take a break, we'll rest. And that's not always the case. I mean, many of us sleep great at night, but we don't feel rested. Chances are that was asked by someone who has
Small children.
maybe small children, because that's a common issue with people with small children, and it's common with people who are older and are taking care of older parents, and maybe have jobs where much is required from you emotionally. But I would say it's not necessarily circumstantial, because whatever it is that you are in, that you're doing is likely where God has you, and He's in all that, and with you in that. So the rest is found in the perspective, and many times it's in what am I holding on to? What am I trying to fix, solve, control in my own strength or thinking or way of being, rather than surrendering and choosing to trust that God has that. So maybe think about the thing that keeps you up at night, whether it's your bills or your job or your lack of job or the children that you're worried about, or how am I going to do this and how is this going to work, and really kind of thinking through those things and what's in your control and what's not in your control, and then practicing the surrendering. Okay, well, this part is not in my control, but I'm going to choose to trust God. Now, again, that's so much easier said than done. I mean, like, I don't know. I have to practice it daily, minute by minute sometimes. The other practical thing is really setting boundaries. I think particularly, like, I'm a mom and I've had 4 kids, and I can say through experience that when you're trying to take care of a lot of people, you try to take control of a lot of things, and you don't let people help you when they're willing to help you, or you don't you think you have to do all the things all the time, and that's not true either. So give yourself permission to not do the dishes, or to not get the laundry put away. Give yourself permission to not have the most perfectly dressed kid in the 2nd grade. Just let go of the things that don't matter as much, and make space in your heart for the things that do, and that you can enjoy those things. That's practical. They ask for practical.
And rest,
right?
Rest and joy, and these things are, they're not meant to be on a continuum. I mean, really, if we really got down to the true heart of joy, that's not when things are going great, man, joy's up. I mean, it's joy. That's just not joy. That's happiness. Or for rest, that's good sleep.
Yeah.
Rest is a heart issue. And I think we talk about this all the time when we're going, dang it, I am so not in this place. And we're always reminding each other, this is a heart issue. This isn't necessarily a behavioral place.
And nobody has it nailed either. I mean, I think people think that I have a restful presence, that I'm very calm. And a lot of times I am on the outside, and on the inside, I'm completely a train wreck. So I can sometimes present really restful, but really what's happening is not. I mean, everything that I'm saying to you, I have to practice, on a daily basis. I'm the one who taught on rest a couple weeks ago and told you how bad I was at it. So, and practically speaking also, I've been known to lock myself in the bathroom.
Yeah, with
So-
that many kids around?
Yeah, I mean, I need peace and quiet sometimes. Like, I need a minute to, like, a timeout for myself, because people are needing me, and do they really need me, or do I need to be needed? All those things get evaluated in the bathroom.
I have so many jokes right now.
Yeah.
And I'm just,
So many.
So many thoughts.
welcome to my world.
Thoughts.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Well, if are we gonna go to Lent, or are we gonna do another one? Oh, for Suzie. Go. It's not Kevin.
Who is your favorite bald guy on stage? That's what it says right here. Okay, for Suzie, could you? I'm really shiny today.
Yes.
Could you give an example of a time or situation where things may have been rough, how that common saying of the why instead of the what really works. What the practice looks like for you.
What the practice?
Oh, so the common saying of like God, what are you doing?
Oh, the common saying is
Or-
figure out the why instead of the what. Why is this happening? Not what's happening to me. Why is this happening to me?
Yeah. I'm right here. I'll clarify. Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be good.
So when you were talking about conflict, let's see.
That would have been me.
About Anderson and just that you said why can lead to a place of entitlement. Even
Yes.
versus what? What are you doing in this situation? I'm just curious, like some more examples of that, what that practice looks like.
Yeah. So I shared this before, but like 6 years ago, we were a part of a church, and I mean, I hate using this example, but this is what it was. But we were part of a church, and the pastor stepped down, and it was a really rough situation, and it caused a lot of division. And our church at the time was not as healthy as I believe this one is, and so there was a lot of like staff that had to leave because we couldn't afford to keep them, and people left, and a lot of confusion and stuff like that. And ultimately what ended up happening was I experienced a lot of burnout personally, my husband and I and our kids and our family, and we ended up leaving and moving here. Now, at the time, my first response at the time when all that happened was like, why does this have to happen? Why? All the why questions, like, why are we going through this? Why did so-and-so make this decision? Why does this, all of them. And I think that was when I started to kind of shift that to the what, because even like there was somebody who asked a question earlier at the earlier service about like when we screw up, does that thwart God's plans for our lives? Does that keep us from living this grand life that God has for us? And I would say no, because the grand life is walking with Jesus. It's being with Jesus. And so the why questions in that scenario led to more confusion, more heartache, more struggle, and the what questions started to, okay, then what's the next right thing to do, and what's the next person I have to make amends with, and slowly those questions led to the unveiling of God's plan, if you will, and the next thing. If the why questions I started out with 6 years ago would never have led me to write the story that we were going to leave California and move across the country without a job, without having sold our house with like 4 kids, about to start high school, the oldest. Like, it just didn't make any sense. But okay, God, you're doing something new. What are you doing? You're shaking things up. You're taking me out of our comfort zone. You're taking us out of the thing that we were so used to and complacent into, and you're leading us into a new thing. So that would be the example, because the whys kind of focus on the ways we mess up and the way other people mess up, and that's just life. It just happens. And the whats lead us to the fact that God is in all things and everything belongs, and there's something in it for all of us in our growth.
That's good.
And being with him. Does that help? Okay. Great. Yeah, so we're transitioning. It's such a beautiful just kind of, I think, the way things are moving, the way we sense that this series being has worked its way through our church family. Our next series is going to be on Lent. And if you don't know what Lent is the 47 days that leads up to, it's actually 40 days, but it's 47 technical calendar days that lead into Easter. And it's the preparation for Easter. And it follows Jesus metaphorically into the desert for prayer and fasting. So when Jesus is in the desert for those 40 days, Scripture tells us that Satan is tempting him. He's physically alone, and Jesus is often portrayed alone in Scriptures. whether he's frustrated with his disciples or falling asleep when they said that they would pray with him, or when he's calling out in the most heartbreaking way, "Why have you forsaken me?" So the thing that Lent does is it prepares us for this great celebration that we're all kind of used to. Easter is a big deal at a lot of churches. And sometimes that day just comes and goes really fast, and we think, oh, we got to go get some frilly dresses, hide the eggs, have a celebration, and all those things are wonderful. But what Lent does is it provides us a season of preparation for that celebration. It follows the church calendar that a lot of liturgical traditions follow. And it takes us through this season of entering into some of Jesus' stories in ways that we don't normally choose to enter into. And like I said earlier, it makes space for our lament. It makes space for our questions. It makes space for our doubts and a lot of our feelings about things. But and what people do traditionally during Lent, and we're inviting you to participate in this way with us, is that they fast from something. And so when I was growing up, I always thought about Lent as like, oh, what are you giving up for Lent? And that is a big part of it, because fasting it makes space for more of God in our lives. We fast to turn our attention towards God in a way that's uncomfortable. It disrupts our routine. So whether you're fasting from food or fasting from anything that distracts you from your intimacy with Jesus, whatever that is that you choose to do, the idea is to disrupt your routine in such a way that you can kind of retune your heart and return your heart towards Jesus. But there's also...
Which is the only way we actually end up growing. I mean, if you think of anything in our lives, when we grow, is generally our routines have been jacked up in some way.
Yeah. And we recorded a podcast about this a few weeks ago, and it's available on the Journey Exchange, and it talks a little bit more about the why behind why we're doing this as a church. But if you look through scriptures, you see lots of stories of people, communities fasting together to bring unity and to bring their focus towards God. And I think it's a great season for us to do that. By the time Easter comes around, the building will be almost done. And that will signify a new season for us. And so for us as a family to collectively come together through prayer and fasting and just, I don't know what's going to happen, but let's see what God does and how he leads us. But
I'm going to fast from building buildings.
That's a good idea.
Thanks.
That will definitely make space in your heart for Jesus.
It will. Well done.
But
well played.
The fasting it's not just fasting alone, it's feasting as well. Sundays during Lent are known as feast days, and so for some people that's the day that they break their fast, but it's also a day of celebration. So you'll notice that even though there are some our times here on Sunday mornings, our gatherings may they're going to follow those stories in the Bible, but they're also going to be celebratory because we know how the story ends, right? So we're not people who mourn without hope. Like our hope is in Jesus and in what he's already done and the expectation that we have of his continued work here on earth as it is in heaven. So I really hope that you guys will join us in that. You might consider something you might want to be fasting from, whether it's a meal or some kind of food or a day a week or what. I mean, however.
Social media. I mean,
Yeah.
Go into your story. I mean, we have a second, don't we?
Sure.
Yeah, we're killing it. We're killing it.
We're
right now.
killing it.
You just want to go into your story really quick of how you started that?
Yes. So I didn't know anything about Lent 10 years ago. I had a friend in a small group. He brought a book by Henry Nouwen called Show Me the Way. And it was a really beautiful, I still use it every year, daily devotional during the season of Lent. And we all fasted together. We picked something that we each fasted from. And then we would get together on Wednesday nights and we would talk through how that was shaping us or affecting us. And through the years, my understanding of Lent and the value of these seasons of the church calendar that prepare us and kind of help us move in a more formative way have been really valuable to me. And
What'd you choose to fast from?
this year,
No. But
10 years? I don't know.
thought it
10
was
years
complaining.
ago? I barely remember anything from 10 years ago. That was a different time.
Oh, that was a different
One
time?
time I fast from complaining. I used to complain a lot. Not anymore. No, I'm just kidding. But
But
I used to
how did that?
complain.
How did that specifically?
The complaining fast?
Yes, like how
So
did that?
the
What did that
complaining
do?
fast was good because every time my brain wanted to complain about something, I would practice stopping, and I got okay at it, you know. But I would, instead of focusing on the thing that I was complaining about, I would immediately try to practice gratitude. Now, that was, sometimes it was conjured up, let me just tell you. Like, to have something that you're about to complain about and then, like, try to think of all the reasons why you're thankful, let's be honest. So, but the practice of it was really helpful
Well, you
because
broke the routine.
it broke the routine.
Yeah.
And it helped me find gratitude where the complaining would actually block my heart from gratitude. And so the practice of the gratitude was really helpful, and ultimately it led me to a greater place of contentment. So it was
Yeah.
it was great.
And the idea of fasting from social media, that's a good idea. Except we're going to be doing something with social media
Yes.
to coincide with Lent.
We're
So,
also going to have it
I don't know how that
available in the
works.
weekly. So we're going to, throughout the week, we don't want you to feel alone in your fasting and feasting. So we're going to provide a meditation every week through social media with some art. It's just something to turn your direction, your attention towards this season. And if you are going to choose to fast from social media, well done. But on Thursdays on the weekly, we'll have a link to the Journey Exchange blog, and it will have everything there for you. So there'll be a meditation, a prayer, and then a song that will be part of a playlist that we've compiled. That if you like to worship to music throughout the week and you want something that you can focus on, we've provided a song for you in that. So our hope is that we can really enter into this as a community collectively, and it will have its own personal benefits for each one of us, I'm sure, because rarely does God ignore stuff like this.
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
But then also, like,
don't think he
collectively
ignores
for
them.
us as a whole, I think it will just be beautiful to see what happens.
And so we've written some blogs. There'll be stuff posted weekly. You'll be able to go to the Journey Exchange and keep up with us. The community will. That's how we want to keep us all kind of on the same page. There'll be
Yeah.
also a couple podcasts that we've done and some different things that you
Yeah.
can listen to.
And we're calling it Lent-ish because some of us have grown up in traditions where that's been really something that we've held dear, and we don't want to disrespect that at all. And some of us have grown up in traditions where it was kind of frowned upon to do anything like that. And we really believe that you can draw from some of these things and from other traditions in Christianity that can help shape us and grow us in new ways.
Yeah,
So
our hope is that if
Yeah.
you don't know what Lent is, that you'll enter into this with fresh eyes. If you do know what Lent is and you had a bad experience, we hope it can be redemptive. If you're kind of in the middle of the ground, which would be me, it will bring purpose to something that I thought was not purposeful. So
yeah.
that's what we're hoping.
And it again, out of a healthy place of being, then we can put these things into practice. So, we're not just giving up something to give something up. This is really us as a community saying, hey, let's do this together. Because we don't want to do this for you. We want to be in this with you. And so we're going to be doing that as well. So in your villages, you guys can talk about this, or just with friends. It might be an interesting conversation. So.
Yeah.
And we'll be walking you through it throughout the next several weeks too,
Yeah.
talking about it.
Yeah, I'm giving up work, so I won't see you guys for about 40 days. So it's going to be pretty cool. But anyways, sue me. It's going to be great.
Practice being.
Sue you?
Well, I mean, her name is Suzie. I just thought
I don't know, but you were supposed to transition this to
I'm
the next point.
on this.
You
Watch
on
this.
it?
I'd like
Yeah.
to-
All right,
Let's see how
because
it
we're like just
You guys keep
toasting
talking.
time here.
So the point of
Here we go.
the point of this is, what are the things that are actually distracting you from, in 2 Corinthians, your pure and simple devotion to Jesus? Like, what are these things that are kind of just getting in the way? Like, as you look through your day, through your week, there are things that are kind of disrupting our flow with God. Like, we talk about alignment and realigning. That's kind of the invitation. Prayer is alignment, and it's just realigning all day long. This is what we get to do with Jesus. It's not like, oh, I did this again. It's like, okay, all right, Jesus, I'm forgiven, and we're just going to realign. Where are you at work? That type of thing. What's kind of been blocking that in your past season? Would you just close your eyes for a second? In this past season, what's been blocking that? What's been distracting you? What's an area in your journey at the moment that a little disruption of the norm would be helpful in? Just as the Spirit of God led Jesus into the wilderness for 40 days, it's Ash Wednesday, it's this next Wednesday, and that's kind of when this starts. And from now until then, what would it look like for us just to be aligning and realigning, saying, okay, Spirit of God, what would this look like for me? What would you be inviting me to practice something different? And remember, we're doing this with Him. We're not doing this for Him. This is with the heart of God. So even as we pray this next prayer, Spirit, would you invite us into some things?